I've been growing faceless YouTube channels for about 8 years now, and this is a brutally honest review, so you know what the reality of YouTube automation is, not the glamorized, sleazy salesman version you'll get from gurus who claim you're going to make 50k a month working like 2 hours a week. Oh, by the way, I'm Archer and I've gotten hundreds of millions of long-form YouTube views across a dozen different niches, and I spend every minute that I'm conscious, and sometimes unconscious, thinking about how to grow YouTube channels. If you want to listen to any particular section, just check the timestamps down below. And let's start out on a positive note. When I started making YouTube videos in 2018, there were basically no YouTube growth advice videos or courses or help of any kind, which meant I trial and errored pretty much every channel that I launched with no outside help within like the first year. But then once I'd blown up one channel to about 100k views a day, I started getting emails from other faceless YouTubers who were just getting started, and we created a private Discord server to chat in. And this was pretty sick because now instead of getting data and insights from the few channels that I'd created, I was getting that tenfold from the other Discord members. This was both motivating and insightful since they would spot things that I would miss and would always be trying to find new growth avenues, even if that meant venturing away from YouTube itself. If you fast forward that to today, now I know like some absolutely massive YouTubers who give me access to both their knowledge and networks, and this wasn't really planned, it just kind of happened organically. And looking back, if I'd known the potential there in terms of networking, and I've spent way more time on focusing on it. Something that I didn't really appreciate until the opportunity fell in my lap is like rewarding my team. When I grew up, I watched my parents work dead-end government jobs where if they worked super hard all year, their bonus would be like a $50 voucher to spend at a supermarket. That's not an exaggeration, that literally happened to my dad. So when I started working for myself and then hiring people to edit videos, to write scripts, and to manage channels, I realized I had the chance to be like a different kind of manager. I was going to be the guy that, without any negotiation or second thought, would give bonuses to freelancers or full-time hires whenever I felt like they deserved it. I still remember the first one that I gave to one of my editors in 2019 when I'd asked him to work really intensely on production for 6 weeks to help me blow up my third channel, and I'd promised him to be rewarded in some way. The crazy thing is, I didn't even say to him how, I just promised he would be rewarded. Anyway, when the channel got monetized, I told him he could have the first 7 days of AdSense revenue as like a thank you, and then the numbers started to roll in, and it was about $1,500 for that first week. Now, my editor's from the Philippines, where the average monthly salary is about $450, so when I told him that, he like legitimately freaked, and then said something I've never heard anyone say, and still haven't heard anyone say since. He said, "I can't accept that, that's too much money, all I did was edit some videos." I was like, what? I grew up like counting pennies in a piggy bank and shaking it every few days to see if I'd like gotten more money in there somehow. And here this guy was saying I was offering him too much money. Anyway, I insisted he take some form of bonus, so he agreed to take on the first 3 days of AdSense revenue instead. But here's the kicker, that guy from the Philippines still works for me today, full time, and when I asked him why he's still with me, he said that I'd given him that money at a time that was really tough for him and his family financially, and it had been a massive help. This like blew my mind because, again, he declined the full 7 days of AdSense revenue that I'd offered him to begin with. Insane. Anyway, the point is being a YouTuber and having an international team gives you the opportunity to do awesome things for people and have a real positive impact on their life, and it basically has no negative impact on yourself. Speaking of negative impacts, getting scammed. When your business is global and fully digital, there's a real lack of due diligence and repercussions for anything that takes place. So as an example, in 2019, I tried to sell a YouTube channel that was performing poorly, and I found a buyer on a random website that was supposedly made for buying and selling YouTube channels. We did loads of negotiating, and then we set up a 5-figure deal on escrow.com. The tricky part here is transferring your YouTube channel ownership from one person to another is pretty messy. Essentially, I got a bunch of emails from the official @escrow.com email confirming the buyer had deposited the funds, so I transferred the ownership of the channel to him, and then buyer revoked access to the channel and cancelled the escrow deal and ran away. So I contacted escrow.com's official customer support to find out what had happened, and they were stunned looking through all these emails because everything appeared to be legit. So essentially, I'd lost my YouTube channel and main source of income, and I had no way of contacting YouTube creator support because it's only available if you can access it via the channel you have in the YPP, which is a massive design flaw. Anyway, eventually I realized I could just tweet at the official YouTube support team, and they responded after like 5 or 6 attempts, and they helped me regain access. But that took like 6 weeks, and in that time period, views on the channel dropped over 80%, so I lost multiple thousands of dollars in that time because it had a real long-term impact on the channel's performance. There are a bunch of different scam attempts that I've encountered on YouTube, from freelancers trying to scam me, to sponsors and affiliates trying to scam me, to people trying to sell me their channels trying to scam me, and these never really go away. You just kind of get better at spotting them and become more strict with your due diligence. Let's talk about actually making money. Making money on YouTube doesn't feel real. Like, most channels go through a phase where they suddenly blow up and are making hundreds or thousands of dollars a day, and that feels awesome. All you have to do is put in a few hours up front for some research, hire decent freelancers, do some pilot testing, and start uploading, and then boom, now you can sleep whilst the channel makes money for you. Repeat this on 4 or 5 different channels, or in my case, 20 channels, and then you get to a stage where the excitement's gone, but now you have something way better. Peace of mind. When you have multiple independent income streams, a huge weight is just lifted off your shoulders. No boss can fire you and make you homeless. It doesn't matter if your landlord increases your rent because you can absorb it. You have total insulation from any minor or major financial crisis that might occur, and that peace and relief is way better than that initial feeling of, whoa, this channel makes $300 a day on autopilot. That's crazy. And you don't need to do 20K or 30K months like I have to feel that peace of mind. You just need 4 or 5 small channels in different niches which insulate you from any sudden volatility on YouTube. Let's shift gears and talk about financial risk. I'm an extremely risk-averse person, hence why I spent about 4 years working in investment banking whilst doing YouTube automation. Being risk-averse doesn't really help you on YouTube. All of the most successful YouTube channels, faceless or personally branded, have taken ridiculous financial risks. Mr. Beast practically ran his channel like Amazon for the first few years, reinvesting virtually every penny at all costs for growth. Now, as a concept, that kind of stresses me out because I grew up in a relatively poor household where blowing a ton of money on a channel or video idea that might work always seemed really reckless. But on the flip side of that, YouTube channels usually are ran on ridiculously high profit margins. So if you pick a niche that has wide audience appeal or a high RPM and combine that with a cheap video medium, then you could easily make 10K per video, having only spent $200 making that video. Or in even more extreme cases, like on one of my channels where I spent $50 producing a video, and that video made $20,000. That's a percentage return of about 40,000%. I don't know any other platform or business model that those kind of results are achievable. You'll have seen over the last 10 years, so many YouTubers have quit or they've gone on massive breaks. And why is that? Well, the day-to-day revenue fluctuations on YouTube can be extreme, even when you maintain an even level of views and video length, which is just so annoying. Then there's monthly and quarterly revenue swings, which make it really hard to forecast what your cash flow is going to be from one month to the next. As an example of this, after December 25th, the RPM on most YouTube channels falls more than 50%, and then it takes until the following September or October to get you back to that level. And when you're a new YouTuber, this can be a massive problem because if you started a channel in July and then grew throughout the year, you'd be really happy with your earnings towards the end, and you'd be reinvesting in your channel. Then the year ends and your RPM is obliterated, and suddenly your channel isn't profitable anymore. Now, this isn't a major problem for me because obviously I'm aware of it now, but it's still tricky because that sudden RPM drop in December could be as high as 75%. And there's no really clever way to predict where it's going to land. Another thing that can be really tricky to deal with is you can make a seemingly great video with a killer title and thumbnail and be really excited to post it, and then YouTube just kind of doesn't show it to anyone and the video bombs. What I mean here is you've got great CTR, good average view duration, and decent viewer engagement, but the YouTube algorithm is kind of confused by this video, I'm not sure who to recommend it to, therefore I won't. This isn't a big deal when you run a dozen channels and produce tens of videos per week like my team does, but it does sting when you put a lot of extra effort into something and then YouTube kind of just takes a crap on it. Especially for people who post epic, high-effort documentaries or deep dives that take multiple weeks to make. You really are at the mercy of the YouTube algorithm, and sudden changes to it can have a material impact on your earnings, whether it's because YouTube's rules have changed and your channel gets demonetized, or because the way the algorithm processes viewer data and recommends videos kind of changes. There are loads of different ways that YouTube can ruin your channel. Oh, and on that note, if any of you guys are struggling with growing your YouTube automation channel, just click the link at the top of the description to join my school community, and I'll actually give you a live one-to-one walkthrough of easy and reliable ways to grow and monetize your first channel without stealing content and without doing anything that makes you feel weird and having to upload hundreds of videos before getting any views. Anyway, I'll put a few examples on screen of when my channels have become demonetized and the sort of impact that's had, and how long it's taken to get to that resolution point. This is one of the main reasons that I actually run a lot of channels, because I have a lot of freelancers across the globe relying on me for consistent work, and by extension, some of their families relying on it as well. So if a channel gets demonetized, it's immediately useless to me, and I have to stop production and be like, sorry guys, I don't really need your help anymore. Now, Most of the time I'm able to get those people working on other channels, but sometimes it's not possible, and it really stings when someone messages me being like, hey Archer, is there anything else I can work on? And I just have to kind of be like, no, sorry, there isn't. I don't know, maybe you guys don't care about that because you just want to make money, but I don't hear people speak about that kind of stuff enough on the internet, and I feel like we should, because people working together online really need to start treating each other like humans and not AI avatars created by Mark Zuckerberg. One of my favorite things about creating faceless YouTube channels is you can explore pretty much any idea without any real backlash. Yeah, you might get some like negative hate comments, but it's never really directed towards you because no one really knows who you are. So any haters are just arguing with their own mental abstraction of the person who runs the channel, which is hilarious because 90% of the time it was a member of my team, not me directly. This can obviously be abused though, which is why I personally generally don't watch faceless channels in my own time, especially ones where people are claiming they can teach you something, but they're not willing to show you their face about what they're supposedly teaching. This is really common in the self-help and motivational space. You've probably seen loads of videos of people claiming YouTube can be a source of passive income, or it can be done with 1 or 2 hours a week of work. And honestly, that's a bunch of crap, because even if you outsource most of the grunt work and production, the overall channel strategy and execution on things like titles, thumbnails, and content topics is always going to be better coming from you, since you're the channel owner and presumably the person who's the most motivated for it to work, and you have the most knowledge. So you can't really outsource that role of strategic oversight, and once you have multiple channels, that's absolutely going to take more than 1 to 2 hours per week, considering you need to actually have a full grasp of the current YouTube landscape, your own niche, and the trajectory of each of your channels. Realistically, for every channel you run, you're going to spend like 2 to 3 weeks at a minimum on strategy, because if you don't, you run the risk of running your channel into the ground as the audience gets bored. And that brings me to a really good perk, which is watching good YouTube videos by other creators is literally a part of my job. When I was younger, I used to feel guilty for watching YouTube because it felt like a waste of time when I should be studying, training, or working towards a real life goal. But once you start earning money on YouTube, you become a student of the craft. So to be a good creator, you need to spend a few hours each week just watching interesting and new YouTube videos, especially ones outside your own niche, so you can see like how people are being creative in different areas and how you could take inspiration from that to put them into your own channels. I started making money on YouTube in 2018, and the first person I told was my brother, which was a mistake, because when we went on holiday to Norway, he told my parents while we were at a pub, and they were stunned and said I should be paying for everyone's drinks. Now, if you haven't been to Norway before, it's insanely expensive, and one round of drinks cost me $70 for 4 people. This was the start of what I realized would be people treating me differently because they thought I was rich now and that I had like YouTube money. The problem was, whilst I'd like to think I'm a pretty generous person, back then I was incredibly frugal. I had a self-imposed food budget of £30 a week and a monthly budget excluding rent of under £200. So anytime there was an event to go to or a thing to buy people would joke, oh, Archer will pay for that, or that's got to be pennies to you, right, Mr. YouTube? It's not like any of my friends or family were serious with those comments, and no one would get annoyed if I didn't splash out. But there was a hint of jealousy in those supposed jokes that if I had never said anything, I just wouldn't have had to deal with. So my main takeaway from this is don't tell people anything related to your financial situation unless you have to, like your long-term romantic partner. My main frustration, and this is a problem which never truly goes away, is hiring, because online, everyone is full of shit. So in real life, lying on your resume or CV is often considered fraud, and depending on the industry that you're trying to like lie your way into, could actually be a crime leading to like real prison time. But the internet is the Wild West, so any person can say anything on Upwork, LinkedIn, and so on, and there are no structured means of verification of anyone's claims, and there are no repercussions of them lying. So whenever you're trying to outsource a role for a channel and you get 50 applicants on Upwork, chances are 95% of those applications are mostly fake in terms of previous work experience, credentials, and quite often the age and even gender of the person applying to the role is also BS. To minimize this, I always ask candidates to do samples with their job application, and I always ask for the source files so I can see that they've actually written, edited, or animated that sample themselves. Anyone who refuses to do a sample, I don't hire, and anyone who submits a bad sample obviously doesn't get hired. It's a real pain doing this because I review 5 to 10 samples for every role I hire for, and specifically in the case of writing, 98% of samples are purely AI, which infuriates me because when I list a role at like $300 per script, it's priced that way to get a decent organic writer, not someone who just prompted ChatGPT. Then what happens is when you call someone out for trying to get away with AI scripts, they claim AI detection software like verifies that it's legit, but that creates another problem, which is every AI detection software is trash and can't actually tell if something's human or AI written. So after you've gone through like all of that nonsense and found a real person to hire, then you face a myriad of delays and excuses in production. So you end up on this never-ending treadmill of sloppy freelancers. You can somewhat get around this by paying more and then bringing on full-time hires who are more committed, but that's a lot of upfront cost, especially when you're launching new channels that might not pan out. Now, you might be thinking like, well, why don't you just outsource hiring? And I've tried that in the past, and the issue I found is threefold. One, recruiters don't know how to negotiate effectively. Two, they might ruin your Upwork rating, making it hard to hire people in the future. And three, they just don't understand exactly what you need from a sample to be confident that the freelancer can actually do what you need them to do for your channel. Anyway, let's move on. One thing that perhaps hurts creators the most is any great idea you have will absolutely be stolen by dozens of other people. That might come in the form of the actual video itself being repurposed elsewhere, like this video on Mugen of Star Wars where someone stole my video and cut it up into a YouTube short, and that got several million views. Or it could be something else, like people recreating your videos in terms of voice, visuals, editing, and style identically, and just changing some of the words. Unlike major Hollywood studios, creators, and especially automation channels, just don't have the budget to like trademark ideas and arm up with lawyers to do takedown claims on other channels or to sue them. So if you come up with a good idea, your best bet is to make a batch of videos really quickly and release them in a very short space of time so your channel grows before other people have time to actually copy that area. One thing that's only hit me relatively recently is doing YouTube automation or being a YouTube creator in general can be quite lonely. My team are all international, I've never met any of them in person, and I only really need to Zoom call someone like once a week. So when I first started YouTube automation, it was fine because I lived in a massive university dorm with 6 other people, and then when I moved to London, I was living with like my absolute boys, so I was never really lonely per se. But for the last 3 years or so, I've either lived on my own in apartments that are just way too big for me, or with my girlfriend who's out working most of the time, so between like 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. every day, it's just me at my computer in this office writing videos and messaging people. The main reason that I started coaching aspiring YouTubers was because I just kind of wanted my working day to have more real engagement with people, and specifically people who are trying to do really interesting things, like one of my clients, Simon, who has multiple channels with over 1 million subscribers each, and starts new channels like hotcakes, and they always blow up, and we just have a good laugh whilst building the strategy for them and discussing YouTube as it changes over time. Anyway, if you made it this far and have any questions about becoming a YouTuber or you need help with your channel, literally just comment below, made it, and then write whatever your question is, and I promise to give you like a useful response. After that, if you want more help, you can join my school community. It's stupidly cheap and people have had pretty good results from it so far.